From a thought point of view, people are usually very confused. There's a lot of disbelief. They find themselves having difficulty with short-term memory. They can't, focus on things. My guess is 6 of the 15 that were going to come here tonight just forgot that the thing was even happening. Some chickened out. Some people didn't want it, whatever. But it happens. That's the way this stuff works out. A lot of times it's because we're very preoccupied with the loss. They're just so focused on what has occurred that, you know what, whether or not I do such and such, whether I pay the bills on Sunday or not, before the Monday morning I have to get in the mail, that doesn't matter, okay? There's just so much that they have to worry about with the loss that the day-to-day mundane is no longer important. There's a great story that I want to tell you of a teenager who I thought really epitomized this preoccupation, and all the other stuff became so insignificant. It was about a 14-year-old boy, and his mom died here across the street at St. Barnabas Hospital. And he was a very, very good student, always doing very well, et cetera. And I think she died somewhere around Christmas or whatever, and so in the February time frame, in the second half of the school year, he basically started to virtually fail. I mean, just wasn't doing anything. And I have to be honest with you and tell you, schools don't get it, all right? But I've seen this many times. I've written many letters. But anyway, so I was talking to this boy, and I had been seeing him regularly. And he's one of the kids who used to review my talks on teenagers. And I said to him, what do you want me to tell the people when I give these talks about why you just started doing poorly in school? Some people are going to think, and a lot of times I poll people, and they'll say, like when I'm training volunteers, well, he was using this as an excuse. He found a clever way where he didn't have to study anymore because with his mom dying, who could blame him, or whatever. Horrible thought of teenagers, but okay. Other people would say he preferred to just sit home and play video games or, whatever else. This is what the boy told me, and I've heard this in various ways many times. He said, Henry, all I want to do is I want to go sit on a mountain and try to understand why my young mother is dead. And once I figure that out, then I'll worry about math and history and English. But to be perfectly honest, I could care less about that stuff in the scheme of things right now because I just really miss my mom and I want her back. Okay? But it's so unfortunate sometimes that I have to work with parents and things to get them to hear that in a teenager because they just think that they're, this excuse and all that kind of stuff. So more times than not, I just think this preoccupation is just something we need to step back, and adults the same way. I just need to step back and try to understand this. And the last thought pattern here is this idea of many people have a sense of presence. They think they saw the person, smelled the person, heard the person, whatever. People ask me a lot, is it true? And how do I know? But it's certainly common, I can tell you that much. And the other part is if you sort of start to hallucinate and things start to get really kind of weird with visions and stuff like that, that's when I think people need to, again, get, some sort of professional help just to make sure that everything is okay. I think on the next slide I'm going to talk about dreams, so I'll come back to that in a second. So how do we behave? A lot of times, as I said before, our appetite or our eating habits can get a little funny, but certainly our sleep gets messed up as well. We can get very absent-minded. We can find ourselves wanting to be socially withdrawn, very, very common. And in fact, I like to refer to grieving as a cave experience. It's not a go out to a bar experience. It's like, let me just go into my cave all by myself and snuggle up with my blanket and be there, okay? And to be perfectly honest, that's what people need to do. Now, it doesn't have to be alone. You can be sitting at a table with a cup of tea or somebody or whatever, but it's not that let me get out like everyone says. You need to get out more. Remember I said the opposite. No, you need to go in more. Because it's going inward when we process this stuff. It's when we're at home on a Saturday and we have a good cry that we're healing. It's not when we're avoiding it. We're not healing when we avoid this. Okay? It's like physical therapy. I took care of a physical therapist one time, a young guy, and we realized how much of what we do is so similar. He said, as soon as someone has surgery, I make them start working their knee the next morning, and it hurts like the devil, but that's the way they heal. It's the same thing with us. the more you avoid walking on the knee, like you don't pretend any of this hurts, the more you don't heal, all right? So social withdrawal is very common. Crying, we talked about, is very, very healthy, but unfortunately less often not as well accepted. People can get very restless. I don't have it on here, but we can sigh a lot, like, you know? And it's funny. It's almost, when I know the person in counseling a lot and they do it a lot, it almost becomes a joke, like, did it again. But I mean, it's just, and I'll share with you, my mom recently died, and I never realized until I started doing it, I started laughing at myself, but you do, it's just, you know, it's just, oh, what's going to happen now, or that kind of release. Some people can't get enough reminders of the person that died, and other people can't deal with it, and some flip-flop. I had one young woman tell me that she had pictures up one day and had to put them down another day, and up and down. You know, she just didn't know where she was. And you think you're going crazy. She really thought she was going crazy. But that's just what happens to people. Some people, like I usually talk about the stuff in here, because people will ask me, well, when do we start to deal with clothing and personal effects and stuff like, you know, that kind of thing. And for some people, because they need so many reminders, they can't deal with it very early. And other people who can't have any reminders, they deal with it very, very quick. The only thing I can tell you is I would say something which is kind of the norm is somewhere in the 6-month time period where people finally start to do something, right? Doing it the day after a death is not as common and may be a sign of something not so good. And waiting 10 years is probably not the right answer either. But, you know, it's obviously somewhere in the middle. The only thing I would suggest is that if you're of the kind of person who needs to get rid of things because you can't handle the reminders, what I suggest is, especially if it's early on, is get rid of them, but in a way that you can get them back. Put them in a box and put them somewhere, because 6 months from now you may feel differently than you do now. If you're the kind of person that wants to, so that would be if you want to get rid of stuff, and then if you're the kind of person that wants them to hold on to things forever and ever, you might find that you need to sort of separate slowly from different things. The other thing is if there's something that's really very important, and for whatever reason it has like a lifetime associated with it, make sure you get a copy or whatever. And what I mean by that is there was a young girl, say 14 or 15 or whatever, her dad was a high school teacher. And basically what happened was he had a voicemail. And his voicemail, she called every night before she went to bed. And so basically, I think it was around March or so when he died, and so she was calling that regularly. And so then what happened is the summer comes, and they discontinued his voicemail. And the poor kid was mortified that she couldn't call it anymore. Had I only known that she was doing this, I would have said to her, make sure you get like a copy of that, or have that tape, or something like that, so that you can always go back to that. The last one here is searching and calling out, or dreams. There's only one thing that I like to talk about in dreams. A lot of times people will say to me, I would feel so much better if I could just have that dream that my so-and-so is at peace, or something like that. Let me just tell you, I don't profess to be in any way a dream expert, but just simply from experience, I'm convinced of two things about dreams. One is that the dream really reflects where you are that day. So if you're at peace, you're going to dream that the person who's died is at peace. If you're still agitated or still upset and hurting, you're not going to end up with that dream yet. And what happens is, a lot of times people will say to me, well, my best friend or my sister or somebody dreamt that they were okay, but I can't. Or came to them, or whatever word you want to put on it. And I think what happens to people is the further away you are from the deceased person, the easier it is to get at peace with it, and the faster you have that dream. The one that's sort of right smack in the middle of everything tends to take longer, all right? And I really do think it's when you're at peace, the dreams are at peace, rather than the dreams will make me be at peace. It tends to work the other way around.